Hi, welcome back. Today we're looking at a bit of a PlayBASIC live video, talking about the forums primarily, what's been going on. As you can see, things haven't died, which is great, but they are dying. Confusing, right? Yeah. So, what were we talking about last? But we're back at the end of August, pretty much. So when I first got notification that there was a problem coming up with the servers, and when they first shifted everyone on to PHP 7.2 or whatever it is, I've actually forgotten now, which none of our websites are written against. Okay, so the forum is probably the big issue there. I didn't write the forum, of course. It's a Simple Machines forum, so it requires a lot of time to patch these things. And Dan was gracious enough to offer up his time and skills to help out doing those things. Most of the faults have turned out to be warnings, which you can pretty much hide in the shorter term. What's happening now is the errors get spewed out to an error log. Anyone's got a website knows what that is. There's a lovely file that gets building up. Lovely, fantastic. We mentioned here that I had troubles shifting it a bit, had troubles, it's not my forte, it's just not my thing. And time is not my friend at the moment. Well, during then anyway. Things have actually changed the last couple of weeks, and I'll get to this in probably a blog all by itself, to be as transparent as possible with people. But here we are with this thing here, and so I got a version running on an updated version of the forum, and we'll take a look at this one here. This is our existing database, well, converted to a newer version of the forum, and it's running a hodgepodge of our theme. Now, it turns out that my theme on the original site here on Underwear Design has a lot of custom code in it. I wasn't aware it had that much actually. So here we have a version of our database from Underwear Design, imported and updated to a newer version of Simple Machines Forum. This runs perfectly fine with the current PHP installation. I've modified some of the theme here. I've been modifying the theme in the background. So this is the standard theme of the forums. You would need to do a lot of work to really customize the theme to suit. But what we do have is we have things like, if we look at go to a news article, let's say, try the making of thesis 12, we've got standard things like our videos phrase. Do we have any internal links there? Things like internal links work as well, different these types of things. Go back to here somewhere, look at some source code perhaps. That'll do us. Right. So we've got a syntax highlighted block of PB code. This forum actually has a built-in select for doing the highlighting itself, which is great. So you can just grab that, copy and paste that across into PB. The styling's a bit different because it does actually use a different approach. I had to modify this to get it to work, which is a bit of a pain. Again, it's not my forte. Styling, it's not my forte. It's not the thing I do. Things like private links work and that kind of stuff. So go back to home, I guess. Retail updates here. Yeah, so there you go. So our private links work. They're phrasing those out, and so you've got to be logged in to see those links. What we should have as well is actually links that don't just jump off site, stop people from posting malicious links and that might take a user somewhere where it might reveal something about them. Well, who knows what, really. That kind of good stuff. Now this seems to be a not it's updated, but it's not as updated as what the current version of the theme is. So because we're running on PlayBASIC.com here, a lot of these links here are still relative back to underwear design. Now, I was gung-ho about wanting to move the forum across like that. I'm not quite sure I'll do it in this step. I might just go back and run do a new backup of underwear design, and then go back and put a clean version of the theme on there. That's what the problem seemed to be, actually. It didn't like my modifications. What a surprise. They are pretty ugly. So put the theme back on and leave that the way it is, and then export that across, because once it's updated on here and you've got the same version of the code base running over here, it's just a copy job. Nothing has to be done really. Just copy the files across, and then cull out the data, or leave those old forums over there for in the interim. But what I have done as well, I'm talked about this up front, is doing a static backup of the site. I wrote this in PB, of course. It was more of a novelty. I looked at some other software that does exactly this, and I thought, gee, if I use that software, I've got to do a lot of almost as much work as if I just write something that runs through and grabs the site itself. So what this does is it runs through. What's happened with this the bit of software I wrote is that it will cache the boards, the index, and all the files that are used against it. So I'll have a look at it now. This is just running on my local computer. There are versions of links that still point outside, of back onto the web server. They're not patched, but here we can just go to this thread here. It's locally stored. The file here is coming from the website. And you'll notice there's some differences to the threads. I've cut out personal data and this kind of stuff, and the idea was to reinsert that going back into it. So you move through the page links down here, you're still inside here, move back to the board index, the general index back up here. So they took a little bit of time to get working, but they work pretty well actually. Things like your code snippets, as we were just looking at before, look at the same thing. They don't work in here because they're implemented as PHP. The idea here was to have the code basically phrased in this kind of fashion, and then but not using the SMF software, just have a version of it dumped out as raw HTML text and the files, etc., which are stored there as well. So pretty much I've saved most of the pages. You can browse through the boards, you can go through different threads, etc. It's kind of interesting way of looking at the actual forum. It's a whole different world. Something like the attachments. Now, you can't do this with a normal forum. You can't just look at the attachments like this, which is really frustrating, to be honest. I know it's a security issue, but there's lots of old. These files go back a long way. Some of them I have no idea what they are, to be honest. a lot of effects stuff there with the PBFX builds. Yeah, heaps of stuff. And up here, go back to our index. Just go back to here, browsing around pretty much. Simple sprite animation. There you go. So it doesn't display the code. What it would do is it will have a very simple displayer function that kind of emulated what the forum was doing. But there's no users, no nothing. So nothing could be destroyed or broken. The idea of that is that if it runs in a simple enough fashion, or if it's, even if I just insert the user data back into the pages, you could zip up the forum and back it up and share it like that as a resource for people to look through. Some of that stuff would have to be extracted. There's no point of having a PV forum that has stuff about drumming in it and all kinds of other stuff in there as well. It's just pointless, But they can be cut out, etc. And the links, the same. Well, sorry, some of the sublinks in here have been fixed. Other links like there's. I don't know if you can see this or not, but when you have links to threads or topics within threads, it's actually quite awkward to solve, because you have to know. I didn't look at the forum code for this, but I must store a table of what posts are in what threads, and then when it sees the message in the topic that you're linking to, it must just look it up and then just compute the hash from there. We couldn't do that. So I had to go through and generate a list of all the thread indexes, and then a list of what messages appear within the topics, sort of reverse engineering what it already does to make those work. The internal anchors are still there, but this part here, this message part at the end there, they're embedded in the HTML, so that's the browser doing that. Anyway, though, it does actually work. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it now. Will I bother to keep a backed up version like that for historical purposes, so we can do weird things like have better searching implemented into it or something like that? I don't know. Or maybe pull out the best 100 threads from the old board and put them up on this website. You can do that kind of stuff. You're not at risk of this thing being destroyed by when you're not watching, because the files can be, I can store the files at home, etc. And just if it's ever deleted or something happens to it, I can just re-upload it. Bam, up, there you go again. That's all the forum website stuff. So we do have a version that's running on a newer version of SMF. The theme you're looking at here is not the latest. I just realised that before when I was playing around with this. It's missing a bunch of stuff. Things like the login and registration stuff, they have their own adjustments I've made, which is some of the hacks I've made to the old code base. Some of those worked and some of those didn't work, of course. It needs me to go back to pick through it again, put time into that stuff to make sure bots aren't signing up on the boards every 2 seconds, and we're not being harassed by an enormous number of bots. Lately the amount of bots that have been hitting the site, it's just ridiculous. So that's the forum. That's where we are with it. The website problem still exists as well. It's easier to fix the underwear design stuff, and I probably will try and get a template made in Bootstrap perhaps, and shift the display stuff across to Bootstrap and use the other display system from Underwear Design. There's a newer version of that. There's always a newer version of all that stuff. I mean, it's terrible to say this stuff, but there's always a newer version of those things that are all written that do work better, and that it's easier to actually utilize. You know, that one has supports members, supports different levels of members, etc. And it was deployed on a couple of other websites, but it was never really deployed on my own website. It was on my blog website for a while. You've probably never seen that because it was turned on for a while and turned off and turned on. Generally, it's just a page of PBFX. So there you go. Might turn it back on one day. I mean, I don't know. That's enough for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your patience. And thanks for having an interest in PlayBASIC. You know, it's nice. All right, bye.